Pasadena, and KBZT Los Angeles, KBEST 97 FM presents the California Conference Call with Mike Carruthers.
Good evening, welcome to the program. You ever find yourself sitting alone in a room and you have this wave of self-doubt roll over you and you start thinking, you're just not good enough, and someday the rest of the world is going to find out just what a fraud you are? That's the subject of a new book. It's called Courage is a Three-Letter Word. Its author is Walter Anderson. Walter is also the editor of Parade magazine, the Sunday newspaper supplement, and he will join us tonight at 12 o'clock. Pornography has been in the news a lot lately, what with the Meese Commission's report, the decision by 7-Eleven stores to stop selling Playboy and Penthouse magazines, and many religious leaders calling for Americans to clean up their morals. Tonight we're going to devote 2 hours to this topic, and we invite your participation via the telephone in just a little while. In the studio, we have some decidedly different points of view represented. Stephanie Kennedy is a member of the Los Angeles County Commission on Obscenity and Pornography. Homer Young is a retired FBI agent. He spent 32 years in the FBI, much of that time investigating the interstate trafficking of pornography and white slavery, as well as the link between organized crime and pornography. And finally, William Margold. Mr. Margold has acted in and or directed over 200 X-rated films and has appeared in X-rated magazine photo layouts. He did appear before and give testimony to the Meese Commission. Welcome to all of you. And first, Stephanie, could you define pornography and obscenity, what the difference is, and where you stand on this whole issue?
First, I'd like to say that I can never really represent the Commission. I only can come here to speak under a new nonprofit organization that we have funded, which is You Have the Right to Know Committee, aimed at getting the Miller Standard in the state of California. Pornography, to me, is not always obscenity, but obscenity is pornography. I feel that the Miller Standard would give the community the right to define what they feel is obscene material.
What's the Miller Standard?
The Miller Standard is a state law, a federal law, that we badly need in the state of California. We are without a working definition of obscenity in the state of California right now. We are presently under the Roth version of that. They just passed some legislation that was called the La Fala Detta Obscenity Act that was passed within the last couple of months, and we are still without a working definition of obscenity in the state of California. I feel that this legislation will bring back the moral judgment of America to make the decision of what is right and what is wrong.
But what would then be the definition of obscenity if this legislation is passed?
Well, there's a test that it explains this, and it's a 3-part test. What is hanging us up right now is one of the 3-part tests. It explains utter without social redeeming values, everything under this present terminology, everything has some utter redeeming value. Under the Miller Standard, we would have serious literary, political, scientific, political, I'm eluding what I'm trying to say right now, but it would give us a value test of which we could measure the seriousness of the literary work taken as a whole, for us to define obscenity in the state of California.
But what to you is pornography? I mean, what is it?
Pornography to me?
Yeah.
Most of the material that I'm seeing on the stands today is pornography.
Is Playboy pornography?
I think that when you are dealing with pornography, there cannot be a fine line between it. It is my understanding in reading the materials that softcore pornography leads to hardcore pornography.
So you would classify Playboy as pornography?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Homer, tell us a bit about your work with the FBI and what it is you did and then your position on this whole business.
In 1955, when I was transferred back to the Los Angeles office,
Would you pull that just a little bit closer to your mouth for me?
Okay.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I was transferred back to the Los Angeles office, so in July of 1955, that's when I started working Interstate Transportation of Obscene Matters, White Slave Traffic Act, broadcasting of obscene language, and this was all put together because mainly our experiences in the past the individuals that were appearing in the stag-type films, was referred to at that time, was set up by pimps and prostitutes. One of the big examples was the Wyman-Hewlin Parr case in Dallas, Texas, where they had contracts with the pimps and prostitutes to appear in the movies. And Rutledge is the one who got the one young lady to appear, and at that time she was 15 years old, later to be known as Candy Bar. But through the years in prosecuting or collecting evidence in order to prosecute the pornographers, shipping matters in interstate commerce, we got to know who the people were within the industry, what they depended upon, and you cannot exist without sending it across a state line. Once it goes across state line, it is a federal violation. And what we're hung up with on many of these things is they're talking about community standards. Now, I was born, raised, and educated in California, and what this stuff is, this garbage they're putting out, that is not our community standards under any circumstances. In 1968, I was made the field coordinator of the FBI on all obscenity cases being worked at that time. This was at a time in 67, 68 that the Joe Colombo family decided to get into it and set up a processing plant at 1700 Victory Boulevard, Staten Island, New York, putting out 50,000 reels of film a month, black and white, 8mm films going out. Shipments were coming into here. Zaffarano was one of the individuals that was arranging for the distribution in this area. And without this individuals, without the organized crime figures in there, none of this stuff would be able to clear through the distribution channels. Now, it's moved all the way up to Star Distributors in New York, Robert DeBernardo and Teddy Rothstein. Reuben Sturman in Cleveland, Ohio, right now are the two largest ones. There used to be a 3. Mike Thieves in Atlanta was one of them. Thieves is doing 3 consecutive life sentences and 8 obscenity convictions in Atlanta Federal Penitentiary. I testified, I think, in 5 cases against Mike Thieves, and Thieves is still connected out here on the West Coast through individuals like Noel Charles Bloom.
Now, you're saying these gentlemen are involved in other crimes besides obscenity. These are organized crime people?
Yes,
And they're in all kinds of things?
Right.
Okay. I'm sorry, go ahead.
But we found also that a parallel to the pornographers in the New York area was also counterfeiting. So in one of the first raids that they found the counterfeit plates for $10 and $20 bills. They found that they were also counterfeiting stamps, so that the mail order operators in pornography didn't have to buy stamps at their face value. Also, it saved them from knowing, the postal inspectors knowing, through the postal meters, how much mail they were putting out. So this was actually in 1967-68 was beginning the move of the big organized crime figures to get into the money.
So you've been involved in this for a long time, and
That's right.
You've seen kind of the dregs of it back in the 8mm days. And what is your gut? What is your position on this? Do you think that we should be able to buy stuff and look at it in our homes, or is your feeling that we should get rid of all of it?
It's set forth very plainly in U.S. versus Rydell, a 1971 Supreme Court decision that says you cannot make, sell, distribute, lease, or give away sexually explicit materials, even though it's meant to be taken to the privacy of your home. Now, if that law were enforced, you'd not have any pornography on the stands today. But they waited around, and then we came in 1973 with the Miller decision, and the Miller decision tried to explain very explicitly what is and what is not considered pornography or obscenity. Now, if you look at the footnotes and you look at the Miller decision, Chief Justice Berger made it very, very plain that this is not protected by the First Amendment. Never has. So this is what we usually run into. Somebody says, oh, you're violating my First Amendment rights. But all we have to do is enforce the law that we have on the books. Now, when Attorney General Levy came in, he wanted to put it in a victimless crime syndrome. And he was telling the U.S. attorneys, back off, let's not waste our time and money with these cases. Well, he had one in Larry Parrish in Memphis, Tennessee. He got 40 convictions in 1 year, even under the policy set out by Attorney General Levy. So it's possible to get in and fight in court and enforce the federal law and get convictions.
All right, let me talk to you for a moment, Bill. And first of all, how long have you been in the X-rated film business?
Approximately 15 years.
Why aren't I hearing you? Wait a minute. Talk right into that thing.
15 years.
There we go. Okay. And why? I mean, you could have been an architect. You could have been a banker.
Well,
Why?
I got into the X-rated industry in a sense like a George Plimpton, to write about it, to find out what it was like. I am a writer. I'm a journalist. I write for a publication called the Hollywood Press. I'm a film reviewer. And I discovered that it essentially was a creative playpen, and I call it the playpen for the damned. I come from a juvenile hall probation officer background, and I got into the business, became an agent, writer, actor, director, publicist, critic, spokesman essentially for the industry, and discovered it to be nothing more than essentially an entertainment area where the world likes what we do way down deep. It just doesn't want to admit it. When I go out and lecture in classrooms, I ask them honestly how many have seen an X-rated film. About 90% raise their hands. How many like it? A few drop their hands, but they admit it. But then if you go into a public situation and ask the same type of question, they seem to be embarrassed by sex. And it's interesting to note that the more that people are pointing fingers at us, such as the Mies Commission, who essentially have done nothing more than drop a mattress on a very small match, the more our industry will rage like a forest fire. If indeed people left us alone, we probably would go away. But I firmly believe that as long as America has a very, very dirty mind and believes that sex is dirty, there's a need for the X-rated industry. We're a catharsis industry. Our purpose is to get America up and off, not out in the street with a hatchet in its hand, like these legitimate R-rated movies, such as the Commandos and the Raw Deals and the Cobras that are laced with violence, no social redeeming value, and these are the kind of films that are dangerous. We're not dangerous.
But now, in the stuff I've read about you, you have distanced yourself from those X-rated films with children and animals in them.
Well, the Adult Film Association in general is vehemently opposed to child pornography, to bestiality, to aberrant violent recreations. The violence in the X-rated films that you see today is between consenting adults. When somebody is spanked, when somebody is tied up, when somebody is placed into bondage, when somebody is put into an S&M situation, it's between two consenting adults, both of whom are being paid very well for what they're doing. These are professional performers.
However, let's take Tracy Lords, for example, who was 15 and in porno movies.
Well, the Tracy Lords situation is yet to be totally delineated as far as fact. I can't comment on what we really don't know yet. Everybody's pointing fingers at Tracy Lords and saying 15 years old. I could say that Tracy Lords was born a man. I could say she had two other legs and a tail. I'm not saying anything about Tracy Lords yet. When the industry discovers the truth about Tracy Lords, I doubt that they'll ever use her again, like many people think they will, because that would be tantamount to Jesus inviting Judas back for a second dinner.
Yeah, but you can't tell me that this hasn't happened before, where a girl's too young and they say, go get some ID, and she does, and she's in a movie.
Well, I know that as a 10 years that I worked as an agent running the biggest nude model agency in the world, I would scrupulously check out their identification, and then I would use a little interesting ploy with people I suspected that were underage. I would say that if indeed you're lying to me, I'll throw you into juvenile hall and leave you there until you're 18. You'd be surprised how well that worked about people that were trying to put one over on me. I don't think that the agents knew, or the agent per se knew, about Tracy Lords' identification, if indeed it is proven that she was underage when she worked. At this point, we really don't know.
Okay. Well, now that we've gone around the table formally and had you speak, I want to start addressing questions and just have anybody answer. But let me first start with you, Stephanie, and ask, why shouldn't people look at pictures of naked women and videotapes of people having sex in the privacy of their home? And who is the Mies Commission or anyone else to say that I shouldn't do that?
What I disagree with is the pedophiles, okay? I think that I do not like looking at sex pictures or making sex dirty. I do not think that sex is dirty, as you have stated. And I don't think America thinks that sex is dirty. I think most people, and we're speaking of Christian people, and we're speaking maybe of the right-wing moralists who really respect sex and respect an individual, and respect their viewpoints of making love as an intimate sexual relationship that doesn't have to be expressed as a dirty thing.
But what we perform on the screen is not dirty.
Well, I think that when you degrade a woman...
How do we degrade a woman on screen?
Well, I'm saying that if you put... All right, you had Linda Lovelace, okay, who I heard in an interview over this past week, spoke and said for 17 days that she made a movie, she was exploited for the rest of her life. Okay?
Yes, she's talking about Deep Throat.
Right.
And she says that a gun was
She
put
says
to her
every
head.
time somebody looks at that, she is exploited.
No, she is legend.
Well, yes,
she is
she
legend,
doesn't
and now
like...
she is re-exploiting herself by writing
She-
lies. in
No,
her
she's
numerous
not writing
books.
lies. You're not accepting
They
what-
are lies. I have talked in depth with the man who worked with her, one Harry Reams, on the set of Deep Throat for all those days she was supposedly exploited. He worked in intimate depth with Linda Lovelace and noticed no bruises, and noticed no guns, and noticed no threats. But when Linda burned out in our industry, she turned on our industry and capitalized on turning. She is a hypocrite. The only gun ever put to her head was a gun of hypocrisy.
I disagree with you. I
Of
think
course
that,
you do.
Yes, I do. I believe that
That's why
children
you're
are
here.
exploited.
Children, but you're talking about children. Linda Lovelace was
I
not
believe
a
that any child who is, any person who is under the age of 25 is a child.
25?
Yes, I'm sorry. I really would like the laws to read something like under the age of 25. I
Why don't you just
believe-
lock every kid up in a drawer then?
We don't
until
have to
they're
lock.
25 years
We
old?
don't have to lock children up. What we
That's
can do with
sad.
children, we can express our feelings and our emotions to children. We can bring them up with values. You say you were
say
brought up
we
in...
can bring them up.
Yes.
The family unit, in my opinion, is basically dead. Who's going
Not
to bring
your
these
family,
people up?
not my family. My family unit is alive.
There are no more Ozzie and Harriets. There are no more Ward and June
I'm sorry.
Cleavers.
You just don't know any family life. It's very obvious. You said you was brought up in juvenile hall?
No, I was not brought up in juvenile hall. I was a probation officer in juvenile hall, and I
Okay.
saw an awful lot of kids coming from screwed up families.
That's true. And that's probably why they were there, because most parents don't know how to
Well,
parent.
here you go. That's it. Most parents don't know how.
All
You know
right.
where kids learn about sex? From their peers, and they learn it all wrong. And as long as they learn it all wrong, and they learn it quote-unquote dirty, the X-rated industry is
But there's a
is
lot of
necessary.
parents out there that are explaining
We
it
are
to
a
them.
masturbatory medium for lonely people.
Oh, I agree with that. I
And
feel
what's
that we
wrong with
are
that? Why do
lonely
you begrudge
people.
lonely people having their pleasures?
I really begrudge people who are lonely that are using our children. When you use
What do
my
you- we're
children...
not talking
Excuse
about
me
children.
just
Yes.
a moment here. I want to get back to the
Sure.
point here. And what is it, Stephanie, that you would like to see? What would you like to see different than what you see today?
I would like to see the people to stop humiliating women, okay? Stop humiliating children. Stop
We
them.
don't use children in
Phil,
I'm
this
come
not
on,
saying.
come on,
I didn't
please,
say.
please.
I didn't say that you were using children. I'm saying that pedophiles use this material prior to, almost in all cases, child molestation.
You can't deny, Bill, that there are children in pornographic films. Now, whether you're
But not
making them
in the mainstream Adult Film Association of America,
That-
XRCO, X-Rated Critics Organization, sanctioned motion pictures.
That's not my
Child
question.
pornography is a very, very minor underground facet of the X-rated industry, as is the bestiality, as is the real S&M that they showed at the Mies Commission. If you really believe that we murder the people we work with, we'd be an extinct industry within a week.
I'm not saying that you murder people or how many people. I don't know those particular statistics and what you are dealing with, okay? I'm just saying what you are doing to the women. When people pound nails into women, such as what was shown here in Los Angeles, or put mouse traps on their breasts, I think that is degrading a woman, and I think that that has to stop. When you put a woman into sexual bondage and have to whip and beat her, I think that is wrong.
There are many levels of that violence, and some of the violence that is created is recreated type of violence where the woman has no more scars on her than I would if I went out and played touch football.
Well, I think that I'm not the LAPD, but there are reports coming out showing that they are involving a lot more sadomasochism and evidence to this effect when they are
Also, I'd
involved
like to
in these
make a
cases.
point, because you say women are degraded, women are defiled, women are mistreated. Women, by and large, in our industry, are creating in this industry now. There are directors and writers, female, and also the women, by and large, get paid more than the men for performing in these movies. I don't think that's denigrating the women. I think that's uplifting them.
How many women, what are their ages? I don't believe that most women even put it together until they're about 25. And when they think back about what has happened in their life, most women that I know that have been involved, that have been sexually molested as children, or who have been raped as women, do not like what they
It's an
did.
interesting thing you say, because most of the superstars, female superstars in the history of the X-rated industry, were well within the 25-year range. The Annette Havens, the Sekas, the Marilyn Chambers, Candy Samples, my God, she's a grandmother, Ushi Dygard. These are women well over the 25-year range.
Well, I'm not saying there's not exceptions to the rules, but I'm saying the people, the majority of the women, if they look back, who haven't made the money on these type of movies, who are involved in this type of thing, would say they wish they wouldn't have done it.
Stephanie, do you separate pornography from erotica?
I do not think erotica is necessary, okay? I believe it's important to discuss sex, and my main interest is with the children, all right? This material that is used, that they're trying to get into the school districts to explain sex to our children, I think it's the wrong approach.
But do you think that it is wrong? I think a recent statistic was that 40% of the X-rated films are rented by women, either alone or with their boyfriends, presumably as some sort of erotic stimulation. Do you think that's wrong? If they want to look at it, shouldn't they be allowed to look at it?
I'm sure that they will always be able to get this type of material. I'm sure that they will be able to be excited by this type of material. I think that if they realize what is happening to the children, then I think that they will make that decision in their own personal lives not to view this, especially if they have children in their homes. Or later on when they become parents and they realize that quality of life that they have produced. I think there has to be a line drawn between hardcore pornography and what is right for the family values.
We'll take a break and be back with your phone calls. Our number is in the 213 area, 520. On the California conference call with me, Stephanie Kennedy, retired FBI agent Homer Young, and Bill Margold, X-rated film actor and director. Now, Bill, I know you talk a lot about the fact that you don't think there's a link between organized crime and X-rated films, and I bet Homer would disagree with you. First of all, why would you say there isn't?
I don't think there's a major organized crime involved, and I think there's about as much organized crime in the X-rated industry as there is in professional sports or politics.
Well, that doesn't, what is that? That doesn't make it right. That's still...
No, it doesn't make it right or wrong. There's nothing wrong with a little organization in any profitable way of life.
Homer?
Well, I'd have to disagree with Bill on that because starting back in 1968 when we did start the case in New York, we had the advantage at that time through the Title IIIs of having telephone taps and microphones, and we did know who the individuals were that were controlling them. As an example, when Mike Davis wanted to go into New Orleans, he had to get permission down there from Carlos Marcello to even come in with his Movie-Matic machines. Carlos Marcello heard that he was coming in with machines, and he thought it was slot machines and pinball machines. And then they had a nice dinner together, spaghetti dinner at Marcello's home, and they had an arrangement. So the 5 bookstores that Mike Davis opened down in New Orleans, he had to be beholden to Marcello McCone down there. But the thing that gets down to where the Gambino family was moving in, and they wanted a part of it, the De Cavalcanti family. And actually, Robert De Bernardo's been identified as a soldier in the Gambino family, and that was done in court down in Miami in 1981. So I have to agree with the New York Commission, where their first man that testified January the 21st, 1986, before the Attorney General Mises Commission, he said anyone that doesn't think organized crime is in and controls pornography would also believe that the Pope is not Catholic.
Would you say, is there any evidence that the video cassettes that are in the video stores now are linked to organized crime? Or is it a fringe element, or what is it?
Testimony from the U.S. Attorney and the fellows from South Carolina pointed out that the videotape business itself cannot exist without going through the organized crime distribution channels. Mainly 2 individuals, Reuben Sturman and Robert De Bernardo. Those 2 individuals control it. And from that, you're losing taxpayers' money and everything else by not being able to control other than what they're doing in their distribution rights.
So they're distributing everything?
You have to go through their distribution channels to even exist. If you don't go through their channels, you're liable to end up like the Spilotro brothers. The other thing is Robert DiBernardo's now missing. He's come up missing.
Sounds like a Mario Puzo scenario. I've dealt in modest distribution of videotape, and I've never met any of these gentlemen, nor have I ever sat down to spaghetti dinner.
That wasn't with tapes. That was movie-matic machines.
Well,
Carlos
you
Marcello
mentioned
and-
tapes. You're saying that tapes can't be distributed, and I've dealt in tapes on a modest basis, and I haven't had to make any deals. I haven't had to kiss any hands. I haven't had to kiss anything that I didn't want to kiss in this business. That's something that people have a misunderstanding about also. No one forces anybody to perform in my industry. No one drags you in off the street, beats you, forces you in front of the camera. Also, nobody forces anybody to look at pornography. I don't go into an adult theater and see men sitting there with toothpicks in their eyes holding their eyelids open. I don't see people standing on sidewalks and tapes running out and assaulting them and dragging them inside and saying, take me home, take me home, take me home. We are an in-demand type of business, and now couples are entering into it. Women are entering into it. They're buying the tapes, taking them home and showing them to their husbands, and we're teaching America a thing or two about sex. Oral sex, anal sex, making love, performing in bed, performing in other rooms other than bed, making love with the lights on instead of off.
Let's go
On
back
top
to
of
the
the covers.
1971 decision, Rydell versus U.S.
Well,
if that was enforced, you wouldn't even
yes, but
be.
why wasn't it enforced?
That's a good question.
Because wiser men prevailed.
I wouldn't
They
say
allowed sex to reign.
that. I wouldn't say that.
Well, apparently it could have been enforced, and why wasn't it? If indeed they had the guillotine, why didn't they chop us off at the ankles?
Why does sex have to be taught? Isn't it a very natural
Because there's an
thing?
awful lot of ignorance in the world.
Oh, there's not ignorance
That's why you
about
have
sex. Come on,
pregnancies
look
coming
at...
out. More pregnancies than you want to deal with.
Do you know why we have pregnancies in the world? Because of the...
Because people are guilty when they're in
Oh,
bed.
no,
They don't
no.
know anything about
Oh.
pulling out.
No, I'm sorry. I disagree with you. I think you're really saying something to our children here in America when you have all this proliferation out there. I think that you are saying to children, this is acceptable behavior. You can go out. You don't have to be responsible for your acts. You can go out and get an abortion. We can provide you with all this. You're not even bringing back the morals into the family. You're not making them responsible for their acts.
Why are you always talking about children?
Because
We're
children
dealing
are-
with an adult medium.
Well, you are dealing with an adult medium, and this adult medium is out before our children's eyes as they walk down the streets and they see it on TV, they see it in these
They
magazines.
see it on television. They
Well-
see the X-rated industry on television.
Well, let me see here. We had, let me see, Jim Clancy, who took off on...
Oh, he did take off. Yes, he rambled on for over an hour saying absolutely nothing until all 9 commissioners were nodding in their chairs.
Well, he was the one who brought this out and took this stuff off the TV network here in the Riverside area.
Get the lock boxes. Keep it away from the
Then
kids.
it has been proven that the lock boxes don't work, that they can jiggle these little dolls around and bring on these particular adult.
The whole thing is, if you tell somebody something is bad, they're going to want to see it. If you let them see it and tell them there's nothing wrong with it, they'll eventually become very bored with it and walk away.
That's not what Victor
Remember
Klein says.
Prohibition. And you would remember Prohibition. I'm pointing like this. I forgot I'm not on
Victor
television.
Klein
I'm
didn't
pointing
say
at Mr. Young. Remember Prohibition. When they were told they couldn't drink, they drank lighter fluid. When the world will be told it can't have X-rated pornography, then they'll go after anything they can get. Leave us alone, and we'll go away.
You made a point a moment ago about Jesus and Judas.
Mm-hmm.
You have a little religious background.
Very, very little.
Leviticus 18.
I'm not
It's
into
better
the
than the
Bible.
Miller decision. It tells you what is and what is obscene and what you should not be doing. Leviticus 18 is set out very beautifully.
All right, since you know it, say it.
Oh, I don't know it. It's a long, long chapter.
I don't know it.
But it tells you everything. It's better
But
than the
isn't the
Miller
Bible
decision.
full of begats? If we ever made an X-rated film about the Bible, it'd be the biggest hit ever made,
Well, right after the Miller decision came out, the Mitchell brothers started casting Sodom and Gomorrah.
which was an abomination.
Yes.
Horrible film.
Yeah, right.
Sure, because most of the X-rated films are horrible movies. They're boring.
Yes.
I'm the first to admit it.
Right.
But occasionally a film like Every Woman Has a Fantasy comes along, which is an enchanting motion picture, and I say motion picture in the full terminology of the word. It is a film that happens to have sex in it, as does Take Off, and the greatest of them all, Misty Beethoven, which will be held among any of the great critics around the world as a true motion picture. Just because it has hardcore sex in it does not make it a damned entity.
I want to let some callers in on this discussion, and first we will go to Paula. Hi, Paula.
Hi.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I personally do not find anything particularly objectionable to certain forms of pornography, okay? First of all, those people are actors, okay? They get paid to do what they do, and they do it willingly. In those instances where they are not doing it willingly, and my understanding is that those are the rare exceptions, okay, yes, there's a problem with that. But they do it willingly. They are paid to do it willingly. Just as I am an accountant, and I get paid to do that, okay? Just as certain people are bakers, and they get paid to bake bread. I mean, so what's the big deal, okay? And as far as viewing it goes, if you don't want to see it, don't rent it, okay? It's just that it seems to me that we seem to be following a trend toward certain groups trying to force what they believe on the rest of us. And, I mean, I can see it. Okay, if we were trying to force them to sit there and watch it, okay, that would be a big problem, okay? And it's an equal problem for them to try and force us not to, okay? I have children. Of course, my children are not allowed to watch it. When my children are adults, if they choose to watch it, I would like them to be able to do that, just as I would anybody else's children.
All right. Thanks for the call.
Thank you.
Our psychiatrist over at UCLA, no, it's not UCLA, he's out of Utah. He said that in his experience in dealing with pornography and people who view it, there's an addicting effect. Then he says there's an escalating effect. Then he says there's a breaking of taboos. And then there is a fourth effect where people begin to act out what they have seen. He says none of us are immune to the tool of learning, and I agree with that. I do honestly believe that if you see enough of this, it seems normal, okay? And I think that when you see this and you understand that there are people out there that think this is normal, acceptable behavior, then you have to, and this has an effect on our children. If you have it in your house, they are going to see it. And once they see it, I had a friend that I was speaking to, and he says, oh, there's nothing wrong with Playboy or Hustler. And I said, what do you mean? How old is your little son? He said, 3 years old. I said, do you realize that you are already desensitizing your children to accept this as a way of life? And he said, Stephanie, I never thought of it that way before. Mommy and Daddy had it in their house, and you expressed that George said this behind the curtain. George, his first earliest recollection of how he got into hardcore pornography, stated at that particular time that his parents had Playboy in the house. And when he started making hardcore pornography, he felt that he was out there doing something spectacular. He was in the movie industry, and he goes on to explain how it destroyed his life.
Yes, we don't want to tell why George was behind the curtain.
Well, I don't want to get. I want to keep on this point here, because let me ask you then: if the children's class goes on a field trip to a museum and they see a picture of a naked lady, isn't that the same thing? What's the difference between that naked lady and the centerfold in Playboy?
I think that we can respect art, okay?
But some people call Playboy art.
Well, did you ever hear of a study by the Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention by Judith Reisman?
No.
Okay, it was supposed to be shown, a study done over the cartoon showed in Playboy and Penthouse during the last 30 years that depicted children being involved in a maimed or maiming or a murdering activity in 29% of them, and 28.8% of the cartoons depicted children having sex with older people. I'm sure that a lot of the people are familiar with Hustler and Chester the Molester in there. I mean, I got a particular thing that was sent to me by Bill Kelly, a former FBI agent out of Florida, where Chester had his drawers dropped and he was playing his guitars, and there was children in a park. I mean, I think you're sending a message out to a lot of people out there. It's okay to have sex with children, and I think that's wrong.
Well, National Lampoon is certainly equal of bad taste in much the same way, but I wouldn't call that pornography, would you?
I suppose I'm a little bit stricter when it comes to my opinion of pornography, okay? I do not want to really force my values on people, but I think each community has the right to make their own evaluations of what they want to see. I know what's right for me, and I know what's right for my children. What I'm saying is I think that we need a state law in here that gives us the right as a community to decide what is right and what is wrong for us.
Okay, Homer, do you want to comment?
Yes, I'm thinking one of the popular jokes, and Bill's probably heard this, about where the little girl looks at the nude statue there and says, gee, there doesn't have a staple in the center. And that's what you were talking about, the centerfold.
Mm-hmm.
But the kids catch on to that, and they even make remarks like that if they are in a museum like that. But I see where Bill's coming from, and also Stephanie. But having been in law enforcement, where you've got the law on the books, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not trying to force my morals on you or anybody else. The thing is, if the law is on the books, either we get rid of it or enforce it. And it's just like you were talking about prohibition. If you want to get rid of the bootlegger, you get rid of the still. And that's what the federal government's got to do. Go after the locations that are making this garbage and pumping it out across the United States. I'm not getting involved in whether this is good or that is good. If it violates the law, let's enforce the law. And the two individuals, had they been enforcing the law, the U.S. Attorney in New York and the U.S. Attorney in Los Angeles, we would not have pornography. You can get rid of it in 18 months very easily.
Well, why don't they enforce the law?
Because they've been going along with a little directive given to them by Stephen Trott, Chief of the Criminal Division. Steve Trott still got his mind fixed as an assistant DA out here, where he's talking about the contemporary community standards of California. But once he became the U.S. Attorney, he had 7 counties to draw his jury from. And it's the jury who decides on the community standards, not the prosecutor. So when he puts out a letter to all of his United States attorneys saying, you should consider your community standards before going into prosecution or indicting, he's giving them a crutch to stand on. And back in L.A., we got one of the best police departments anywhere in the United States. Excellent. And 8 guys that are working darn good. And I think their work on the pimping and pandering thing is great. It's a real nice thing. But their hands are tied in many ways because we still have this Roth Memoirs thing here to try to enforce the law. And that's like trying to drive a Model T Ford down the freeway down here in the high-speed lane.
Mm-hmm.
In 1972, we tried to change the law in California. I was one of the 3 individuals that sponsored that, along with Senator Harmer and District Attorney Woodruff Deem. And out they came, the pornographers, saying, oh, you do that, you won't be able to see True Grit, you won't be able to see the Bible. They gave the same stuff that they gave back in Maine just a few months ago. But the thing we wanted to change to came out in the 1973 Miller decision. Everybody in the United States got the Miller decision, what we wanted in 1972 here in California. The lobby up there and Willie Brown is going to stay away from changing any law where you can get successful prosecution in this state at a state level. But we don't have to worry about the state level. Get the United States Attorney to enforce the law. And when you look at what Captain Doherty testified to, how many individuals are located right here in the Los Angeles area, this should be the main place for a strike force. Bring Marcella Cohen out of Miami. Let her get the strike force going. It wouldn't be very long. We'd get rid of a lot of people.
Bill?
Well, Doherty's an interesting gentleman. He wrote a movie called Hollywood Vice Squad, which has been reviled on both sides of the coin, which was filled with the biggest bunch of allusions to the hells that go on in our industry. It's a laughable joke. So I don't want to even talk about him. As far as our industry in general, I think the quote-unquote federal laws and the state laws, I think they're well aware of the fact that if they did crack down and drive us in 18 months out of business, they would succeed in only driving us back underground where 20 years ago we began and where we know how to survive. And they would sooner have us legislating ourselves above ground where they can see us and keep an eye on us, and we can keep an eye on ourselves, than have us back underground.
Wouldn't it make sense that if you outlawed pornography, the link to organized crime would be even tighter, and you'd be back to a pretty strong organized crime link with that and pornography.
Oh, you use the word, Mike, outlaw. I use it the other way. Enforce the law that we have. It's not outlawing it. Enforce the law that we have. And if they don't want that law, then they should have a group go back to the Congress and say, hey, let's take the law off the books. Now, this is what they tried to do in the Presidential Commission on Obscenity and Pornography from 1968 to 1970. The whole thing was lined up with William B. Lockhart as their chairman, an ACLU attorney. The whole thing was to, let's get rid of the pornography laws. Now, that thing was stacked. It had 18 people on there. And boy, I'm telling you, that report was as phony as a $3 bill. And it was not accepted. It was voted down. Only four senators voted for it. 80 was against it. So there's no comparison really what they came up. We interviewed the guy over in Sweden or in Denmark. We said, hey, what about this glowing report that you came on with? Mm-hmm. He said they handed me $10,000 and told me what they wanted me to write. And that was the glowing report from Denmark. Now, the other thing, besides that, I was interviewed for 4 hours in 1968 by 2 members of that commission pertaining to the move of organized crime into pornography in the New York area, Los Angeles area. Boy, when that report came out, it was as different as day and night. I gave them documentation where they could actually find it in court records. And the other thing was, the pornographers wanted to know in advance what was going to come out in the July 1970 report. So in April, at their big meeting down in the Bahamas, they invited one of the 2 guys that had interviewed me, who's now teaching law at the University of Texas. And he told them what they were going to do in the report. They were going to ask to do away with the laws on pornography. So all their attorneys says, hey, you better get on board now because everybody else will be getting into the business. Well, there was a backlash. A lot of them were arrested. At their next meeting in September of 1970 at the Jack Tar Hotel in San Francisco, they were really berating their attorneys for telling them to go ahead. Hey, we got the wrong advice. Usually by attorneys, right?
That's what they're paid for.
Yeah, right.
Keeps cases in court.
There are a lot of people waiting to join this conversation.
Okay.
Let's talk to Dave here. Hi, Dave.
Yeah, hello, Mike. Listen, I was very interested in your program. First of all, I remember that when Reagan first came into office, he said he was going to get government off our backs. Now the Meeks Commission is getting government on our backs. About the laws, I know there are laws against child pornography, and I personally would like to see laws against portraying violence against women. That's to do with that. But the real point I want to make from the lady that was talking on your show, I want to just make a point. I don't think the family is being destroyed by pornography. I feel it's being destroyed by mobility of the population, urbanization, and the corporate ethic of grab what you can and heck with everyone else. And I feel the corporation has played a major role in destroying the family. I think that the pornography thing is not really the issue. And I feel that we have to look at what's happening to our society overall. And we get bogged down in pornography. I think that it's like a buzzword or something.
I didn't mean for it to sound like pornography was destroying the family. I'm just saying that pornography, when it involves or influences my children, okay? I'm not saying everybody in general is, family is being destroyed by pornography. That'd be an absurd statement for me to make. I feel that when it involves my children, then I have a right to control my child's social and moral environment. I have a right to teach my child what is right and what is wrong. I do say that this material that is out there is saying a statement to my child who will be becoming a teenager shortly that will be involved in sex acts, and I have to say to him, what is out there, what you are seeing and what you are viewing is not how I want you to treat a woman.
Don't you feel that government is getting on our backs? You know, Reagan said that he was going to get it off our backs. Now he's putting it on our backs, and you're probably somebody who voted for Reagan. I wondered why you can put up with this hypocrisy.
Well, let me state something to you. I believe our commission came out 2 years ago with AB 595 to confiscate the profits connected to organized crime. That legislation went up to Sacramento. It went out of our commission as a misdemeanor. It went up to Sacramento into the Public Safety Committee, passed through that, went through the Ways and Means Committee. I called Sacramento. Ron Kester. I says, how is that particular legislation working up there? He said that the ACLU came up there and testified and wanted that to be brought in line with the rest of the organized crime a felony acts. They changed it from a misdemeanor to a felony. It was back to the Public Safety Committee. It is now law, but it is not a misdemeanor. It's a felony. I believe that we have the 1982 report to the legislature on how organized crime in California, the annual report to the California legislature. I'd like to read to you the first paragraph, okay, from that particular report. Organized crime figures in California reside and operate in all the large metropolitan areas of the state. Though in somewhat different degrees, these organized crime figures are involved in a host of illegal activities, including bookmaking, extortion, loan sharking, labor racketeering, narcotics trafficking, fraud, pornography, and receiving stolen properties.
What about the defense industries? Are they included too? Because they've had some people arrested there too. Probably they're in that too. I'm saying, I know what you're saying, and I think it's terrible that organized crime is so powerful in the state. I just don't feel that getting more government involved in our personal lives is going to help us with organized crime. I think I think we have to deal with a moral question in our society, what's going on in our society. But more laws are not necessarily going to be the answer. I think you can see people who obey the law if they agree with it. You know, with prohibition, for example, what the gentleman brought up, when the people were told not to drink liquor, they didn't go along with that law. If you tell people about abortion, for example, if millions of people feel that they can't go along with it, they'll have abortion anyway. So if you can get all these different people all over the state and all over the country to believe what you're saying, that's what you should do. But if you're just a minority, I think you have to get everybody involved and go around the state and the country and put up such a campaign, and then you can get people to vote on it, and that's the way you should do it, but not just by passing laws. You should go out there and you should try to give your point of view wherever you can go. As a free American, you have a right to do that. And if you get people who believe what you're doing, then you can get together with them and press your legislators, and that's the way the American system works.
Thanks. I'm sorry, we have to interrupt.
Thanks
for the call, Dave. We have to take a break. We'll be right back with more of your phone calls. I'm Mike Carruthers on the California conference call tonight with Stephanie Kennedy. She's a member of the Los Angeles County Commission on Obscenity and Pornography, retired FBI agent Homer Young, and Bill Margold, an X-rated film actor and director. We're taking your phone calls, and let's talk to Don here. Hi, Don.
Yeah, hi, Mike.
Yeah.
How are you tonight?
Fine, sir.
Well, I couldn't help. I'm at a friend's place, but I couldn't help but call in because I heard Bill Margold, who, of course, has all the answers. He's very glib. And he's got all his reasons why pornography doesn't damage anybody, but I'll tell you right now, I'll guarantee that if he was honest in his answer, the main reason he's in the business is the old money. That's the only reason he's in the business.
Oh, I love that. Everybody supposes that I'm in it for money. Well, I'm sorry. His name is Don?
That's right.
I'm sorry, Don.
I'm in the video business, too, but I'm in the more respectable end of it. I do videotapes for the real estate industry.
Well, I consider my side of the business respectable also, Don, but I'm not in it for the money.
I'm sorry. I've spoken to many men like you.
But you've never spoken to me. Don't suppose what you don't know. I'm not in it for money, and I'm not in it for sex. I'm in it for one thing and one thing only.
I'll say something very openly on the air. I've many times seen the Hefner interviews. To me, he's a sleazy character, always was and always will be, and he has no respect for women.
All right, well, I'm in it for only one thing.
Yeah.
Glory.
For glory?
Yes.
Yes. No.
You know what my card says, Don?
Yeah.
God created man, William Margold created himself. There are no dollar signs on my card, and my card is not pink like the color of flesh.
Now, I had a man that gave the same arguments as yourself, that was an old Errol Flynn buddy in his young days, and I'm a friend of his in many ways, but...
Who was that?
I am not going to mention his name on the air. He's an old buddy of his in his young days, and he's mentioned in the book.
Well, I guarantee you Errol Flynn was in it for the same reason I was in it.
No, just a moment. Now, this man lacked the real respect for women over the years until he met me. Now, I've convinced him. I said, Charles, if you come down and watch the people that come out of an X-rated movie theater,